Welcome to episode 5 of the reading order for the Flash from the Omnibuds Cafe. I'm your host, of course, Brian, and we're just showing off here where we've been so far. Just a quick little recap for you guys. So we've covered the Silver Age, we covered the Bronze Age, we covered William Mester Loeb's, the start of Post-Crisis. We covered the first half of Mark Waid's run, the first two obbies. Today, though, however, we're going to transition a bit before finishing Mark Waid. That didn't work out as perfect, but you know. But anyway, yeah, so we're going to talk about Grant Morrison's run. And the thing that's funny about the Grant Morrison run, and exactly what happened, is Waid and Morrison decided, hey, you know what would be fun? Let's switch books for a bit. So while Morrison went to go write, while Waid went to go write JLA, Morrison came on to The Flash, as well as Mark Millar, of course. So we're going to cover that, as well as the grand finale of Mark Waid's run. We're going to use trades because we don't have the obby yet. So we're going to cover Mark Waid Book 7 and Mark Waid Book 8. And that will finish Mark Waid's run today on the Omnibuds Cafe Flash Reading Order. So this is the Flash Deluxe Edition by Grant Morrison and Mark Millar. This is a short run. Again, you can tell it's not big. It's not an Omni or anything. But I will say one of the cool things that they did here was, for all you Omnibud people, all you people obsessed with spines, they actually matched the spine to be similar to the Mark Waid as well as the William Mester Loeb's Omnis. So everything's very consistent and nice. Sit back. I'm going to take the dust cover off and we're going to dig into this run. So, we have this. I'm just going to go on a little mini rant about this. DC was doing this thing at the time where they had these covers where all the covers for that month were just really close-up images of the hero's face. I don't like the Flashes at all. I think it's the worst one. I don't know why. Wally's just got this look where he's like, it's so dumb. Where you get some better ones, like, for example, Green Lantern's is cool because you got Kyle, like his teeth are grit and he's like clenching his fist and the rings like that's a cool image. While he's just yeah, it does not look great. But anyway. So now are things really gonna change that much between Mark Waid and Grant and Mark? Not really. Like, there's not really too much status quo changes. I mean, one big thing will happen near the end. But this almost in a way feels like it kind of is, you could go from Mark Waid Volume 2 right to, well, actually, you have to. That's the point. That's the reorder. So these are the next issues. But it's not going to feel completely out of whack. Like, it's not going to feel, like, completely different. It's still classic Flash. It's still classic Wally, and everyone's still here. But there are some really, really cool stories in this run, and honestly, this is one of my favorite runs. For as short as it is, it's only like 12 issues, but it's a really, really cool run. And one of the first stories we get here is the Living Costume, who ends up taking down Wally, and when I mean take down Wally, I mean he takes down Wally severely. Wally's legs are broken. And you think, oh, well, speed healing, right? Yeah, but even then, broken leg is still going to take a while to heal even for a speedster. The fastest man alive in a wheelchair. So, of course, this is still the living costume. Basically, the living costume is this, like, entity that goes to, like, these different people and basically searches for different hosts. But he can't, like, sustain it forever. So as you see, he, like, the latest host he said is, like, decayed and died. So now he's going to go to this cop and possess his body. But one of the cool things that does happen in this story is Wally learns some new tricks from the old Speed Force. He finds out that he can use the energy to make his own costume and keeps his legs healed temporarily. This is the debut of the Speed Force suit, which is something that Wally will use. I mean, it's not going to look like this. It's going to look like the classic Flash costume eventually, but this is how it debuts. And yeah, that's the cover. Ugh. But yeah, he is able to use this to take down the living costume eventually. Or the living suit. Now, I'm sure some of you who know Grant Morrison's work might be a little hesitant, might be like, oh, is this going to be one of those, like, weird Grant Morrison runs that are very, like, out there and trippy? Yes, but also not to the extent where this ain't Batman, or this isn't going to be Animal Man. You know, this is very, like, it's still very basic by the numbers classic Flash stuff. And, of course, we get a Mirror Master story. Yay, love Mirror Master. Probably one of the coolest stories, where at one point, because of his abilities, Wally ends up somehow splitting apart all of his different personalities in this mirror dimension, and we get all these different rainbow-colored versions of Flash that are all of his different emotions, until eventually he does split back into, like, one personality. But this is a really cool story. Very trippy. Very, very Morrison-y. But again, not to like that crazy extent. And then here we get probably one of my all-time favorite single issues. A Day in the Life of the Flash. So, basically, Wally is still kind of healing from the leg injury. So, at the time, Jay is kind of a holding fort. Jay's basically the default Flash until Wally gets fully back on his feet. This is such a cool story because we do get to see things go on in, like, Jay's day. And one of the cool things is that he's actually tried to see if he can help out one of his dying friends, who is actually one of his former enemies, the Thinker. And one of the things that he does end up doing is he's trying to see if he can find the Thinker's old hat so the Thinker can actually think of a way to, like, cure his cancer. Really cool story. Especially if you're a Jay Garrick fan, this is, like, a fantastic story. And, of course, this is a great moment where he ends up being Wally and Dick Grayson for lunch. Why Dick is like that, I don't know. If any Nightwing fans know what the deal with that is, please leave comments below. Let me know. I never understood why he's disguised like that. But yeah, this has one of my favorite lines where Dick goes, "Man, that's who I want to be when I grow up." Jay ends up taking down Captain Cold. But yes, he eventually does end up finding the Ficky Cap. He does give it to the Faker, but Clifford the foe, Cliff does decide, it's like, no, like, I had my time. I don't need this. It's just let me go. Because one of the things that's actually funny too about this day too is actually today is Jay and Joan's anniversary, and Cliff basically tells him, like, dude, don't worry about me. Like, I lived a full life. I'm good. Go home to your wife. Celebrate your anniversary. It's a great story. And then we actually get a little fun. We get a fun crossover between Green Lantern and Green Arrow, a 3-part crossover, where it's Wally, Connor Hawk, and Kyle all going on a cruise together. Though at one point 3 of their villains do end up following them on this cruise, and things of course go awry because superheroes trying to take a vacation. Ha! Yeah, fat chance. But yeah, overall, pretty fun story. Paper watch. Kyle, please. Okay. Now we get to another story I'm probably going to gush about a little bit. This is another one of my all-time favorite Flash stories. This is called The Human Race. I love that pun. Because it is kind of fun. Because we will see that, yes, this is going to be a big race for the human race. So the story does start out where we find out Wally as a kid actually had an imaginary friend. Or at least we thought he was imaginary. Until we do find out that he is actually real. And he's from the transmitter Radio Land. But here's basically what happens. So, the last issue ends where this one speedster is, like, dead. Why is he dead? He is exhausted from running. He has been running forever and ever. Why has he been running? By these two guys right here. They gamble. They gamble to see who is the fastest in the entire universe, and they just have speedsters run, and run until they die. And now apparently it's Wally's turn. And basically they say, you run for us, or we basically destroy your planet. So Wally, of course, decides he does have to run. And it is a pretty big event because one of the things that's cool is that he's got, like, an earpiece, so everyone's able to, like, keep track of him. He's able to talk to, like, Linda and Jay and everyone. It is a really cool story, but one of the cool things is that you find out who his opponent is. His opponent is actually his imaginary friend, Crackle. And one of the things that I think is so cool about this story is that I feel like this is almost like Grant Morrison's way of writing a crossover or writing a race between the Flash and Sonic the Hedgehog. And ironically enough, we finally did get that this year in the DC Sonic crossover. But for the longest time, we never had this meeting. And I don't know if I mentioned it. I think I mentioned it. You probably see it like my other my room video. But also, I'm a big fan of Sonic the Hedgehog. So to see 2 of my favorite characters come together this way is pretty cool. But there's more that I like in this story. Like I said, I love the moral of the story. I love the visuals. It's a very classic, like, Flash problem. He's just got to run. But can he run quicker? And also one of the things that's cool is that it does end up bringing people together because at one point, so basically, Crackle is basically considered the champion of this contest. Crackle has been running for all this time, and he eventually Wally does find out that Crackle is actually cheating. One of the things that happens is Crackle is actually using the energy from his home planet. The people from his home planet are giving him energy to run. So Wally at some point decides, once he finds that out, he uses that knowledge, and he more or less recruits the entire human race, all of Earth, to start running. Here's what you have to do. So yeah, the entire human race, like the Justice League is assembling together as well. Everyone on the planet has to run to give Wally to give Wally the speed that he needs to fully win this race and to take down these aliens. Because specifically at one point, one of the things that does happen is Crackle does sacrifice himself. So Wally is going to win. But he is at one point going to refuse to run, which ultimately does mean that these aliens are going to destroy the planet if he doesn't continue running. So one of the things that he does is he makes them gamble. Because again, these guys love to gamble. He makes a gamble with them, say, all right, we're going to do this. If I beat you back to this area before you can teleport here, you stay away from Earth. And of course, these aliens are like, okay, yeah, you're totally going to beat me. But because of Wally's connection with the Speed Force, and to the fact of all these people running and giving him more of an energy, he is able to outrun the ability of teleportation. He's able to outrun teleportation. He basically runs faster than the speed of light. And does win the day. And probably has one of my one of my favorite Flash stories. But it does lead into the next story, which is the debut of the Black Flash. What's the Black Flash? Who is the Black Flash? Well, apparently he is the Grim Reaper for speedsters. When he comes, it is the speedsters' time. Time to go. And one of the things that does happen at one point during this run is the Black Flash tries to go after Wally. And it costs Linda her life. Linda is gone. And because of that, Wally has lost all motivation to become the Flash. Admittedly, I'm not the biggest fan of the story for this reason, but yeah, basically Wally has a whole meltdown and decides it gives up being the Flash. Now, of course, Linda's going to come back, but we don't know that at the time. But just to give a comparison of why I like Barry better than Wally is Barry was going to do the same thing when Iris died, but eventually he was talked out of it and Barry continued. Wally was not going to continue until at some point he does eventually find out Linda's alive. But again, this is not a contest. But yeah, this is near the end of the run. Here's the Black Flash. Like I said, there's a lot of big stories that happened in this very small run. This very small book. But one of the coolest things that happens is, how does he outrun? How do you outrun death? Because that's basically what the Black Flash is. He outruns death. What does Wally do? Wally eventually takes the Black Flash all the way to the beginning of time. Back to the beginning of time, where everything starts, everything is created, and the Black Flash, of course, ends up disappearing because of that. Wally's able to get out of time, of course, and then at one point he does figure out that Linda was actually trapped in the Speed Force, and he's able to pull her out. And then it ends with Wally proposing to Linda, and we eventually go back into Mark Waid, where we will see Wally and Linda's wedding, and we're going to get to those books right now. Alright, so here we are at The Flash by Mark Waid, Book 7. So, of course, I did make a video earlier this year talking about certain Flash books that be coming out at the time of this recording next year of 2026. One of those books, of course, being Flash by Mark Waid, Volume 3. So, unfortunately, we don't have the Omni right now, so we're just going to finish this off with the 2 remaining trades that we have here. So, let's do this. Alright, so we're going to start here with a pretty special book. This is called The Life Story of the Flash. And what's cool about this is that this is actually the book that was in the Return to Barry Allen story. This is the book that Ian Bard came to the future with. So this is the book now in reality. Written by Iris, this is about the life of Barry. And it's really cool because we get to see some of more of like Barry's beginnings. We get certain scenes now in more of a modern context. Particularly with one of the ways that is handled about Barry and Iris's first year of marriage, and how for a while she actually didn't know that he actually was the Flash, or she did but didn't say anything. Originally, in the original book, of course, he intended to tell her the day they got married. Problem is, of course, he chickened out. Barry is very close guard when it comes to secret identity. But technically, he ended up keeping his promise and did tell her that night when he was talking in his sleep, and that's how she found out. Now, at the time in the comics, with the Carrie Bates run, they kind of just like brushed that out of the rug, and Iris just like, oh yeah, all right, whatever. Like I figured you were just gonna tell me wherever. Whereas in this, you get a little bit more context to it, and you get to see it in a more mature fashion and show like Iris's actual reaction of how she like did find out. It was like, why would he not tell me? Why would he not trust me with this? So it's really cool we get some modern context stuff with that. Also, there are a couple of retcons in this book too, particularly because at the time this was before Infinite Crisis, so the multiverse at this point was gone. It was one Earth again. So they had to explain away Jay Garrett being from Earth 2. And the way they did that was they basically explained that Keystone City was there all along, but it was hidden. It was like the entire city was like under like an invisible like shield or something, so no one ever knew its existence, no one ever saw it. That's how they explained it. Or that's how they explained it, which I thought was pretty cool. And also one thing that this book added to, which I really appreciated as well, was at the end of Carrie Bates' run, one of the things that does happen, of course, is Barry and Iris do end up getting back together. They go back to the future together. But one of the things that they kind of leave hanging open is Barry's almost second wife, Fiona. They never go back to her, never explain what happens to her. So in this, we actually do get that Barry actually goes to her, reveals his identity, and says, look, I'm the Flash, this is what happened, and unfortunately, my wife is back, and I'm going to be with her, and I'm sorry, like, I don't mean to break your heart. So I like that they gave, like, Fiona kind of a conclusion. It didn't make Barry just seem like a cold, heartless dick that just, like, abandoned her. But I'm sure you're probably wondering, what's all this talk about Barry? I thought we were in the Wally era. Well, the main reason this book did come out and around this time, and why we're doing this now in the reading order, is this is to set up the next big arc that happens. That happens in the pages of the main Flash book, which is probably one of my least favorite stories, and not a story that I'm particularly fond of. And honestly, I think a lot of other Flash writers aren't fond of it too, to the point where it hasn't really been brought up since. But anyway, we're talking about it here and now. So the main reason this book is here now is that it does reveal a retcon that Barry is not an only child. Barry actually had a twin brother. More or less, basically a twin brother. But what happened was a drunk doctor did the delivery of, or screwed up the delivery of the Fawn's baby, and instead of giving the actual baby to the Fawns, they took the second Allen baby and gave them to the Fawns. Therefore, Barry never knew he had a twin brother, and he has this brother now, who we find out later on is Cobalt Blue. Who is the new villain in this story. And again, I'm not the biggest fan of this story. Like, I don't like the idea of Barry having an evil twin. It's just a little too weird and generic for me. But yeah, this is stuff that I introduced is Cobalt Blue. But before we get into him, though, we got a little tease for him, but then we're going to take a little brief break. It's time for a wedding. It's Wally and Linda's wedding. Now you think everything's going to go without a hitch, everything's going to be perfect. But then something does happen. All of a sudden, Linda disappears. We don't know why. We don't know how. But all of a sudden, she disappears. Wally, though, not aware, and even more strangely, doesn't even know who Linda is. And this is what's going to carry on the book for a good while. Someone has taken Linda. Someone has taken her off the grid, off of Earth, basically, into another dimension. And again, also now, the bigger problem with it is no one knows she's missing because no one knows who she is. So this is something that's going to be happening for a good while in the book, in these last two arcs. Sorry, I'm going backwards here. I'm just trying to get to the cover. His world is about to be destroyed by Cobalt Blue. Okay, now we're in the Cobalt Blue phase. Again, like I said, not the biggest fan of this villain. I mean, his look and all that's pretty cool, and I like his powers, having, like, the blue flame and the sword and all that. Everything about that's cool. I just don't like this. This whole thing. My name is Malcolm Fawn, and I do Barry Allen since the day I was born. Yeah. So he is a Fawn, but more importantly, he's Barry's twin brother. Which, again, like I said, don't like. And, like I said, the funny thing is that this story is, like, kind of one and done for Cobalt Blue. Like, he's in this story, and then he's never talked about it again. He's never referenced again. No writer has ever decided to use him again. So I feel like it's almost kind of like retconned out at this point. Only because, again, no one's talked about him. But it's still, like, kind of an interesting story, because one of the things that leads into stopping him at one point is this event called Chain Lightning, where Cobalt Blue's going through all these different times, trying to kill all these, like, different speedsters to gain more and more power. So Wally, Jay, and everyone has to go through all these different times and stop him. And meanwhile, of course, while this is going on, Linda's still in this other dimension, and again, no one knows anything about Linda except for Bart. Bart is the only one that still knows about Linda's existence. So he actually finds it weird that he's like, wait a minute, what about Linda? Like, what happened? Everyone's like, who's Linda? Bart's like, are you nuts? So yeah, we get this pretty cool story. I mean, the idea of Chain Lightning is pretty cool. I'm sorry to repeat myself. I'm just not a fan of Cobalt Blue. At one point, though, we do run into Fawn again. Again, that's what happens with time travel sometimes. meets up with the twins again. One thing that is funny about this story that happens at one point is there are many different timelines that they go to. There is one timeline, however, that Wally doesn't want to go to, and that's in the future where Barry is. Wally does not want to encounter Barry again. He doesn't want to encounter seeing him. He doesn't want to deal with it. Which, again, is understandable. Like Barry's been gone, and Wally just doesn't want to deal with the heartache of having to see his old uncle, his mentor, again. But it is pretty cool, especially where we do get to see them team up. And it's cool because this time this is the actual Barry. It's not Fawn. But there is like a really, really sad moment where, yeah, it's right here. Where Barry talks about like I didn't know that any one of us could manage this, but together, and yeah, he goes on. He goes. Now if you focus, come on. It's up to the three of us. This is a team now and forever. And you just see this look of like Jay and Wally just looking at each other like, we both know that's not true. Yeah. But of course, Barry doesn't know he's gonna die. Eventually, he does get killed here again. And he has to, Wally has to end up dealing with the anti-monitor at the end of the story. Wally more or less ends up going back to the point in Crisis again, having to deal with the anti-monitor. And he almost screws up the timeline where it's him that ends up almost dying instead of Barry, and almost complicates all the time. He is able to fix it, though. It is kind of cool for Wally to, like, try to, like, get his revenge a bit, like, avenge Barry by doing this. Of course, still things do go awry. Wally just going faster, faster, and faster. But because of all this, more time complications happen. And then Wally is gone for now. And we have this new character. Who is he? We're going to find out in Volume 8. And here we are. This is Book 8. The last volume in Mark Waid's run. This essentially will be the second half of the third Omni. But now, who is this new character? Who is this Flash? We're going to find out. I'm just going to skip over this issue. This is kind of a random flashback issue, but alright. So now here we are. Here we are, the debut of this new Flash. And he will be known as Walter West. Admittedly, I do think it is a pretty cool costume. Walter is very different, though. He's definitely a lot more grimmer than Wally, a little more serious. And also this moment here, this is the moment I was talking about earlier, where Bart is actually the only one that is aware that Linda is missing. He's the only one that knows her existence. Everyone else, of course, laughing it off, thinking like, oh, it's part of his weird virtual reality programming, but of course we all know better. Linda's still trapped in this alternate dimension. This is part of the annual. Fury of the Folded Man. So the other thing that happens in this run, that at one point, this character debuted actually in the last volume, named Angela. She's a character that Wally starts briefly seeing, but then, of course, everyone assumes Wally is dead and gone. And we see the other Flash, we see Walter, and her and Walter start to get along a bit. So now we get the big unmasking, because again, people still don't know that it is Walter or it is Wally at this point, because the whole mystery or the whole reveal is that Walter is basically from an alternate reality where Iris was killed. And because of this, Walter, again, becomes a little more brutal, becomes a little more grim. Doesn't give up being the Flash, but goes about it in a different way. Got some stuff here with the Rogues. Yeah, all in all, this is some pretty interesting stuff. We do eventually get to the point where things come together. Wally eventually does come back, and at one point he does remember Linda. And we finally find out who was the one that took Linda in the first place. Abracadabra. Yep, like I said earlier, the main villain of this entire run. Abracadabra's back. So basically we find out that Kadabra uses a spell to send Linda away. To send Linda away, trap her in basically at the outside of time, outside of reality, and does it where no one remembers her whatsoever. The only person that does remember her is Bart. Because of him being from the future, the spell doesn't fully affect him. Eventually, at one point that does happen is Walter and Angela fall for each other. Big shenanigans happy here. Here lies Linda Park. Died in 98, died again in 2000. Yeah, that's right. We're in 2000 now. We're past the 90s. We're near the end. Reverse Flash does come back at one point. Or at least we believe it does, until it's all set up to reveal that it's actually Wally. And it's Wally disguised as a Reverse Flash. So basically he could trick Abracadabra to bring Linda back. Near the end of the run. Actually, one of the cool things, there is actually a cool moment here with Superman that happens early in the Walter West saga, where before people don't know who he is, he does reveal himself to Superman, and Superman more or less basically tells the League, because he sees that it is a version of Wally, he says he's fine, he's cool, we can trust him. Like, Walter basically was, like, the default Flash for a good while. While, like, he was in the JLA books, he was in the Titans book. But yes, we also do finally get the big day. The wedding of Wally and Linda finally does happen. They do finally get married. Things are happy. Everyone's in embrace. Well, Walter and Angela, not so much. Unfortunately, their love cannot work due to time complications, reality complications. Now, Wally and Linda are off on their honeymoon. This is near the end of the run. I mean, pretty much the main stuff is done for the most part now. It's just like some fun filler stuff in between. There's a team up with Shazam. And for now, at least, this is actually the last issue written by Mark Waid. Right, where it says a heartfelt goodbye from Mark and Brian too. But what's cool about this is issue 163. This is not written by Mark Waid, but what's cool about this is that this is one filler issue, and then the next issue will start the next writer, which we'll get to next time. But I think it was pretty cool that they decided to include it here so we're not missing the issue. We got everything collected. We just go right into the next run. But anyway, yeah, that is it. That is all of the Mark Waid era. It's basically all the 90s. Grant Morrison, Mark Millar, Mark Waid. This is it. This is one of the biggest runs on The Flash. And we are done. And we are now going to go next time where we will see my personal favorite run for Wally West. Next time, we're going to talk about Jeff Johns.